Why does the first independent nation in Latin America and the Caribbean find itself in need of another revolution? Will cough syrup-related deaths in the Gambia cast a wider shadow over generic drugs manufactured in India and exported to various parts of Africa and the global south? And is the government in the Philippines likely to make any moves to put an end to targeted killings of journalists critical of the ruling dispensation? We pose these questions to our reporters and guests on this latest episode of the Daily Debrief, coming to you from the People's Dispatch studios here in New Delhi, with me, Siddhantani. First up, the most populous nation in the Caribbean and the first independent nation in all of Latin America and the Caribbean region is now better known globally as the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere. Poverty, food insecurity, soaring inflation, fuel shortages, widespread kidnappings and killings, and now the looming threat of a cholera epidemic have forced millions of Haitians onto the streets in protests that have continued for weeks on end. They are demanding the resignation of the president and de facto prime minister, Ariel Henry. Haitians are also demanding the US and the OAS withdraw support to the Henry regime and the application of the Montana Agreement that calls for an installation of a transitional government for a period of 2 years in order for the nation to recover from the crisis caused by the ruling far-right Haitian Tête Kale Party, the PHTK, which will allow time to rebuild society and organize elections for the next government to take root. Most recently, police fired tear gas on thousands of protesters who marched in Port-au-Prince, the capital, against the government's handling of the fuel crisis that has been exacerbated by blockades by armed gangs of social infrastructure as well as the main fuel terminal. I spoke earlier to Zoe Alexandra of People's Dispatch for the latest on the situation on the ground in Haiti. Zoe, good to see you after a while on the show, at least for me. First, fill us in on what is the latest from Haiti that you're hearing, what are reports telling you, and what are activists on the ground saying?
Well, there have been protests going on in Haiti for the past several weeks, really above all against the increase in the cost of living. We've seen these cost of living crisis these protests pop up across the world, from Europe to countries in Africa, Latin America. But of course, the Haitian context has a different element to it. But yeah, people have been on the streets protesting against the increase in living and largely directing a lot of their anger about this extremely untenable situation where they've seen ridiculous increases in their basic items, food consumption items, hygienic items, of course, fuel and other necessary products. But they're directing a lot of their anger at the current president and acting Prime Minister Ariel Henry. He took over in the country after Jovenel Moïse was assassinated in July 2021. And since then, he's made a lot of promises to democratize the country, to hold elections, to carry forward some of the very necessary reforms that people have been calling for. But we're seeing that once again, Haiti is in the same situation where the price of living in the country is impossible. Wages are low, prices are high. People see no solution. And it's a country that has extremely high rates of unemployment, extremely high rates of food insecurity, extremely high rates of poverty. And the people have shown that they're willing to take to the streets and willing to demand what's theirs.
There have also been calls by these movements, various social movements, over 100 of whom have sort of come together for these mass protests, to sort of demand the application of the Montana Agreement, which and for the US and other countries to withdraw support from the Henry regime. What are the likelihoods of progress on these fronts?
Well, this is the crucial question, which is why it's not just another cost of living crisis protest. In Haiti, there's a lot of factors at play, not to undermine other protests in this sense, but in Haiti, this increase in cost of living is directly tied to the political crisis that the country has been suffering under for the past 4 years. This is a political crisis that's really been, by and large, supported and underwritten by imperialist powers, largely organized in the core group, which is a group of ambassadors from the United States, from France, representative from the United Nations. These powers have essentially allowed this political crisis to continue in Haiti. It is a situation in which there has been mass corruption by the ruling party, wherein the former president who was assassinated just a year back, Jovenel Moïse, had unconstitutionally overstayed his term in office. He was meant to leave office in February 2021, but he argued that he really had more time to stay in office. This added on to existing anger in Haitian society. They've been calling, because of the kind of moral bankruptcy of the ruling party, of Jovenel Moïse and many of his counterparts. It's important. It's not just about one figure or the other, but it's really about this entire political class that has been subservient to imperialist interests, that has been subservient to the interests of the West, that has, partaken in horrible acts of corruption at a time where the Haitian people need so much economic support, need to take forward economic development, but the government has, instead of this, pocketed the money. And so Jovenel Moïse was one of the kind of figures of this, representing this moral bankruptcy of the political class. He overstayed his term in office. He said that he was going to rewrite the constitution. He said that he was going to hold elections only a year later. And so there were mass protests against Jovenel Moïse. And the people and people's movements came together and came up with a transitional government. They even selected a judge who was going to serve as head of this transitional government. But of course, this was not respected. And we saw Jovenel Moïse getting even more support by France, by the US, and by the United Nations, which are really seen by the Haitian people as the primary imperialist forces that are present in the country. Following this, Jovenel Moïse was assassinated. And once again, it kind of put another layer of political crisis in the country. Ariel Henry took over, and he once again said that he was going to carry forward elections, that he was going to democratize the country, as I mentioned before. But the movements knew that this was not going to happen, and so they came up with this Montana Agreement. It's a mass coalition of civil society organizations, of political groups, of religious organizations that all came together and said, we have a solution to all of these problems. We have a way to take forward the democratization of Haitian society, and we have a way to propose a transition to a better country. However, this also has not been respected by the Ariel Henry government. He's also enjoyed support from foreign powers. And it is unfortunate because this is a plan that was really built through great alliance building, through opposition parties coming together and creating this plan for better Haiti. And once again, the Haitian people have been failed really by their colonial masters, by their neo-colonial masters, who continue to favor and to privilege a situation of crisis and a situation of economic insecurity over a real democratic solution. And so I think, without a doubt, the Haitian people are going to continue protesting, continue demanding that the government take action, and continue demanding that imperialist forces get their hands out of the country and allow for them to have autonomy and to have sovereignty.
And it's getting more and more desperate, I guess, with both the public safety as well as the public health aspects of the situation in Haiti getting more and more dire, Zoe. But I guess, like you pointed out, the hope there lying in people taking to the streets and taking action and demanding action from the political class and the ruling class. Thanks very much for those updates, Zoe. India has gained a global reputation for providing the world with a high proportion of its generic drugs, often allowing access to critical, sometimes life-saving even, medicines to millions in the global south at prices that are relatively more affordable. However, the recent WHO alarm or warning relating to cough and cold medication exported from India that has led to the death of over 60 children in the Gambia has put the entire industry under a shadow of doubt. Gargia, who works with the People's Health Movement in India, has been tracking the story closely and has more details on this current case, the circumstances in which it took place, and why it's critical that Indian authorities respond both strongly and quickly. Gargia, good to see you on Daily Debrief. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. So first up, tell us exactly what happened. Is it related to products being supplied by a particular company, or is it a more widespread issue?
So what has happened actually in Gambia is a very unfortunate incident. This relates to four different types of cough and cold syrups that have been supplied by a particular company known as Maiden Pharmaceuticals, which has produced these medicines in Haryana in India. So what has happened is that the samples of these four cough syrups have been found to have very high amounts of diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol, which have caused this issue. So you can see many places that it's been mentioned as being a contaminant, so that people don't confuse. These are actually chemical compounds also. So what they have do when they are in high amounts is they cause gastrointestinal problems in children, like nausea, vomiting, and so on. And they even, because of their very high amounts, have caused renal failure in these children who have taken these medicines. And what this isn't the first time this is happening. We have seen in 1990s also, and later in 2010, around in Bangladesh and Nigeria, respectively, that this diethylene glycol, which was found in medicines, has affected children and has led to death of many children. And in this particular case, the World Health Organization, which has flagged this issue, has come up with a figure that around 66 children have actually passed away because they have taken this. So it's a very unfortunate incident, and it's a a bit of a shameful situation that we are in. That some companies, in this case, a small, not a very well-known company in India, seems to have exported substandard and bad quality medicines to Africa. And the government of India, to an extent, has been saying that this particular batch of medicine, cough syrups that have been sold, have not been in circulation in India. So that is what is their stand until now. But on the whole, what it shows is the lack of regulatory, control on the companies. And this particular company had said on its website, according to many media houses, that they follow the World Health Organization's good manufacturing procedures. The WHO has fact-checked it and so said that they have never given any certificate to this company in particular.
Right.
So there are these issues that this company seems to be a habitual offender also. There have been a few cases where the governments of Kerala and Gujarat in India have pointed out that their medicines are not up to the mark, but it's not this particular cough syrup, but it's some other one.
Yargya, as we were mentioning earlier, I mean, with generic drugs that are produced in India, exported all over the world, and allow millions and millions of people access to sometimes life-saving critical medicines, particularly in low and low middle income countries. These sort of incidents are bound to have a wider impact on the industry as well as the image of Indian pharma manufacturers.
You are very correct in saying that actually both China and India supply quite a sizable amount of medicines that are used in African subcontinent. And what this actually means is that the confidence that the population, the people in the countries have, will slowly wither away. And what is happening is these are generic, because of one company, will we be in a situation where people will start questioning every generic drug that is being manufactured from India and China? And it actually will impact, to an extent, the image of the industry, definitely. Because on one side, we are known to be supplying, accessible medicine. But if they're not up to the quality, the people taking it will not be very happy. And there is also an issue here that we seem to be missing, is the lack of capacity in some of these countries. For example, Gambia, in this particular situation, in one of the interviews, I think the health authorities were saying that they do not really have the infrastructure to do thorough testing that is actually needed for, checking all the medicines and medical products that are imported. So, this also shows the lack of infrastructure, which over a period of time, because of money drain, because of financially putting Africa in a bad spot, like exploitation and over a period of time, have reduced the infrastructure of Africa and some of these countries in dealing with it. And I hope that, luckily, this one also has come through WHO's, regular checkups and so on. And whatever has happened, they seem to have played a vital and good role here. But
Right.
it looks like we are late. Almost 66 children, dying in this age and time is a very shameful incident. And we hope that, this company and all the people involved in this are punished accordingly. And it also does not spread a bad image in general to the generic medicines and accessible medicines in general. So hopefully a very strict punishment or necessary action is taken, but also immediate actions are taken to see that such incidents do not happen, even if they are imported from one country, exported from the other. So, in all these permutations and combinations, we should immediately make sure that quality is equally important, but also the accessibility, which is its low cost.
Right. Thanks very much for your time today, Gargia. Hard-hitting radio broadcaster Percival Mabasa, known to his fans and followers as Percy Lapid, based on the name of his popular show Lapid Fire, has been murdered in a blatant attack outside his residential complex in Las Piñas, a city in the larger Metro Manila area. The Philippines Journalists Union said this was the latest in a long line of targeted killings of journalists, close to 200 since democracy was restored in 1986. Mabasa, on his Facebook page, where he frequently put out radio commentaries, was hailed as a commentator who helped people cut through the barrage of fake news and who had the courage to criticize the politics and policies of both current President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. as well as his predecessor, Rodrigo Duterte, particularly the violent, vigilante-based war on drugs and red tagging of anyone critical to the regime. Anish covers the Philippines for People's Dispatch and joined us earlier for more on the brutal murder. Hi Anish, hope you're doing well. Good to see you again on Daily Debrief. What is emerging from reports and from statements from the family of the journalist who has been killed about what could be the possible reason for this? It seems like a clear case of a targeted killing.
Yeah, I mean, that is very much it. Everybody understands the fact that this was essentially a targeted killing by, as always, unknown assailants with riding on an unmarked motorbike. And it happened. The thing is that unlike other killings, the political killings that have happened over the past few years in the Philippines, where it would happen outside of some of the major metropolitan regions, this happened in the heart of Metro Manila, which is the largest metropolitan region in the Philippines right now. And that shows there is some kind of emboldening of a certain kind of politics where any kind of critique of the government or the establishment is not tolerated anymore. And that is pretty much what we are seeing with the killing of Percy Lapid or Percival Mabasa. Now, Percy was one of those more popular alternative journalists in the Philippines. His YouTube channel, Lapid Fire, had about 200,000 subscribers. And that shows, for a country like Philippines, that shows how broad his base is and audience is. And that shows also the fact that there is definitely a massive space for alternative media that does not do the pro-establishment line in Philippines. So in such a situation, you're really looking at this is not just a chilling effect kind of act that has happened. This is a silencing act that has happened on journalists, especially journalists who take more critical stand. Considering the fact that Percy Lapid's last segment talked primarily about red tagging and the dangers of red tagging and how it is being used by the government to silence opponents, especially grassroots movements. It shows that there is definitely, something that is unsettling for the powers that are the ruling dispensation in the Philippines right now.
Thanks, Anish, for that update on what is really a quite brutal and tragic story. And of course, as independent journalists and broadcasters ourselves, I think we can also take the opportunity to express solidarity and with the family of Percival Mabasa, and as well as all those journalists working on the ground in the Philippines and elsewhere in extremely difficult situations. That's a wrap for this episode of Daily Debrief as well. To those who have been watching, thank you very much. For more details on all of these stories, of course, as always, head over to our website, peoplesdispatch.org, and give us a follow on the social media platform of your choice. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.